Sean, Reid, thanks for joining us here at Social Media Escape Club, talking about show your work a bit. And you had mentioned your collection, your I don't know how to describe it. You described it that it was a bit artfully cacophonous.
Yes.
But it's a bunch, so it's not just like, and I don't know if this is a dirty word, but it's not a toy collection, but like, I don't think you want to use.
Oh no, you can totally call it toys.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
I know that might be
100%.
Okay, but it's a lot of stuff. So if you could just go into that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, 100% call it toys. I don't even try to pretend like it's not. Yeah, like a lot of what I do now is I now have the means to buy all the things that I wanted when I was 12. The downside to that is so many of those things are so much more expensive now, and which makes me curse my parents a lot more.
Oh, they were cheap when we were kids. Yes.
Oh man,
and then we just chucked them. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah, and now I pay many hundreds of dollars. Like I'm like, this is even worse than inflation. Like at least if it was $25, that's just the inflation adjusted price from 1984. I can stomach that, but every now and then I'll pluck down like a few hundred, and I'm like, this is absurd. What am I doing? Why did I just pay multiple hundreds of dollars for a He-Man figure? But
I was gonna ask, what's probably one of the recent ones that you did lay down some cash like that?
So this is going to be horrible for people watching because I'm going to turn the camera in it, and I apologize for anybody that gets motion sick. But if you look around the other side of my desk here,
whoa,
that's my giant robot collection.
Yeah. Okay.
The one in the front that looks like the one in the back is actually a re-release that just came out.
Okay.
And amusingly, I paid the same amount for both of them. They were like $230.
All right.
The one in the back came out in the 70s, like 1978, maybe.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, I don't know if you can tell, there's a Godzilla hiding back there next to Boba
Okay, I
Fett.
see it. Yeah.
And the Godzilla was the Grail piece because I had one as a kid, and it took me forever to find one. And the upside, and apologies for my camera being horrible now. That's great podcasting, Sean.
It's all good. It's art. It's art. Whatever.
I know. I really just need to have like another camera that I could actually properly rotate that's stable and doesn't involve my thumb being in the middle of everything. But yeah, I buy a lot of. So in the case of like the Godzilla and the robot behind him, the ones from the 70s, I bought them broken and then just kind of have bought replacement parts to fix them over the years. But those were things I had as a kid. The Godzilla in particular, it was Godzilla I had, the other one I wanted. And my wife and I were in Savannah, Georgia at a vintage toy store, and I saw it and I was like, I gotta have this. And then they did the re-release that just came out, and I read the name, I saw the listing, they didn't even have a picture. I was like, I know what this is, and I put down the pre-order, and then it showed up, and it was exactly what I thought it was in the box that it came in. It was fantastic,
oh my goodness.
which is a whole other thing. But yeah, that's probably the most recent. Although I did just have, there's a website online called Big Bad Toy Store, and they do this awesome thing where they have a pile of loot, and so I will pre-order something, and then when it comes in, I'll just say put it in my pile of loot, and then I can just have one shipment. Yeah. So rather than paying shipping on all these things, I just pay shipping one time. And I had a box show up that had like 13 figures in it of various things. So I'm still buying, and these are new toys. So I'm still buying new stuff because the toy companies have realized that all of us dorks with money that are rebuying our childhood will also buy new versions, like I did with this giant robot, of the stuff that we had when we were kids. But yeah, so I despite what it may look like on my shelf, I try to limit my collecting to just a few specific things. And so if I'm talking toy lines, for me, it's going to be Transformers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and He-Man, Masters of the Universe stuff.
Oh, wow.
Those are where most of my money goes.
Yeah.
Love it. Amusingly, I'm technically too old to be a Power Rangers fan because that came out when I started college. But as I'm fond of saying, Power Rangers is Saved by the Bell meets Godzilla, and that Venn diagram is me in the middle.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah. So I now have a stupid amount of Mighty Morphin Power Ranger stuff too. But yeah, and a lot of it is, a big part of it was like, oh man, this is stuff that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it, particularly with the vintage stuff, kicked off a little bit of a completist thing in my brain where it was like, oh, I have it, and now I need to have all of them. And that's something, as space started to become a premium, I've gotten more picky because I realized that I can't just keep buying everything. And I don't have to have all of them. Like, there are some times where I look at a character and go, I don't even know what this character is. Why am I buying it? Like, why am I spending $50 on this figure? I don't even know what this figure is, but it's checking a box off on a spreadsheet, and I've put myself in check there. My wife is much better than that in that she's much more prone to say no to something that she may want, but she's like, I don't have to have it. So she has a little more restraint in that regard. But she leans into, and we both do this, lean into like art toys and just interesting figures. And so it may not have a connection to her childhood anyway, but she just thinks it looks fascinating. And so she'll buy a lot of that stuff. So our house is a mix of like things we remember from childhood, interesting art pieces that we find that happen to be, soft vinyl or, an actual action figure. This is one of my favorites recently. Shout out to, and I need to look up his name. But this is Mega Church.
Oh, Mega Church.
Yeah. We got this, man, I wish I would have, do I have his name? No, I don't have it. I should have had this handy. I wasn't planning on talking about it. He is an artist that is down here in the Southeast. Every year, Asheville, North Carolina has a artist toy, a custom toy show called Assembly Required. And it's a matter of like, it's people that do this thing called kit bashing, where it's you take parts from other toys and you put them together and you make a whole new figure out of it. So that's, you're taking apart different pieces and putting them together. That's kit bashing. Then they've got like this guy, this was a resin cast that he made and then printed on a resin printer. People that just print, that design and have things made overseas and then bring them back. Like they do the design here, ship it off and get it made, over in China and then ship back. It's all over the place, and it's all unique, original pieces. It's not like you're going to go and get something, like you're not going to pick up anything and be like, oh, I remember this from my childhood. You might look at it and be like, oh, I remember this arm from this character from my childhood. So we have a lot of that kind of stuff around the house too. And it's all just, it's artfully cacophonous in that it's, my wife is an artist and she knows where to put things to make them look really interesting. Mm-hmm. She did not do this wall behind me, which is why it's kind of a hot mess.
It's the grand poster, and then there's this hand, like the circle.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
This is glorious. This was my Christmas present. This is a cross stitch that Jen, my wife, commissioned for me. She found the guy online who does geeky cross stitch, and it's from a scene from the movie Hackers, which is a definitive movie. My life can be summed up in 3 movies: The Crow, Hackers, and Rad. If you want to know me as a person, watch those 3 films in order. You'd be like, oh, I understand you. And this is a scene from Hackers where Johnny Lee Miller's character, Crash Override, is yelling out of a police car, hack the planet. Amusingly, she specifically requested, I'm going to totally go off on a tangent here. I apologize.
Do it. This is great.
She specifically requested that the shirt be pink. The character's shirt in the movie is not pink. But here's the pink shirt story. So Matthew Lillard of screen fame is in the movie Hackers, and he plays a character named Serial Killer. He was at a horror convention in Atlanta, and I was like, sweet, I'm going to go and meet Serial Killer. In the movie Hackers, they go through a series of actual technical manuals that are real manuals. Hackers is both this weird movie where a lot of it is so technically accurate, and then the parts that aren't are wildly not technically accurate. And they go through these manuals, and one of the manuals is the pink shirt book. And as they say in the movie, it's so called because of the ugly pink shirt the guy on the cover is wearing. If you've ever used Norton antivirus anytime in your life, it's Norton. It's the guy who's Norton is named after. He's on the cover. It's the guide to IBM PCs. It's a real book. I bought a copy on Amazon. I took it to Days of the Dead. I handed it to Matthew Lillard, and I was like, will you please sign my pink shirt book, so called because of the ugly pink shirt that the guy on the cover is wearing?
Wow.
He loved it. And
Yeah.
and he might have been blowing smoke, but he said he's never signed anything hackers related like that before. And I was like, perfect. I'm glad I could be that person.
Oh.
So the whole deal about the pink shirt book and the pink and getting it signed is why this character on this cross stitch has a pink shirt. Yeah, and I need to rework this wall because it's a cluster right now. If you could see the number of posters on the floor that I haven't hung yet.
Of course, sure.
So that's why this just goes
that to that, yeah,
right there. It sits between a synthwave Lamborghini and a French Masters of the Universe movie poster.
Wow. Now, see, I'm gonna try to pull this back into the theme from this book of don't be a hoarder. Look, no, but this is real. Like you were on our weekly Zoom call for Social Media Escape Club. Talking, and then you brought up this delightful collection of everything you have and stuff, and it was like, whoa. And then you threw out the term artfully cacophonous, and like the room lit up, and we were like, what? And this and that, and like we were laughing, and here we are now, and like you store like, and all of this is nothing like. So what do you do? Like that, we didn't get to any of that, but like the story, the joy, the stuff that lights us up, the influences of that, and this is what the chapter totally speaks about. It is how stuff gets shared, and how like you didn't come on that call and be like, well, I do I don't even know exactly what and how you work, your profession. I know it's something with computers, which is horribly minimizing what you do. But you didn't. You were like, this toy thing, this collection thing. It was like, whoa, this sounds amazing. Just putting that out there of like that's how so much of this goes together, and like in art, in music, in how we operate, even in what you do in your work, like that is a part of you. Like when you get on, I don't know if you get on Zoom calls with your coworkers, if this is the same setup, but
100%.
So that tells the story, and that's like, you if they don't know you, they know a little bit about you because of that poster in the back.
Yeah. So when COVID happened, I was teaching software development, and that's what I do now, full time. I do software development as a freelancer on the side as well. But I went from being in class in Atlanta, and I could do some stuff with the classroom. There is a thing that
kitty, I hear a kitty.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, let me throw that cat out real quick.
Oh my goodness! That's a loud kitty cat.
And she's this big.
Really?
Like, she's tiny. Yeah, she's tiny. She's just so loud. And she's gotten louder as she's gotten older. She's 15 and just likes to announce herself now when she walks into the room.
My cat's sleeping right now. We're safe now.
Nice.
The dragon's sleeping.
I have her and two of her children, and the kids are both 15 now, which is wild.
Wow.
And one of them was in here. They're quiet. Like Gus was just hanging out in here and he was asleep, but she comes in, she has to announce herself.
Yeah.
And my wife is actually walking the dog because he's a year and a half and he's very
okay.
Well, what happens is that she will yell at him and he will bark at her, and then it gets actual cacophonous.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So getting back on the topic. So, I was teaching in person. I would do things in the classroom to decorate. We do a thing in software development called ducking, where we put a rubber duck on everybody's desk. And we explain that when you're working through a software problem, it's just critical thinking. It's just problem solving. But oftentimes you'll look at it and you'll be stuck. And what will happen is if you try to explain it to somebody else, as you're explaining it, the answer will come to you. And so this sort of semi-apocryphal thing that software developers do is we have a rubber duck. And so it's like, pull it up and try to explain it to a rubber duck. And the rubber duck sets sort of a tone for an audience. They become the stand-in for a non-technical person that you're trying to explain things to. So in person, I would set up rubber ducks that would make it kind of obvious as to what you were getting into. And my primary rubber duck was a devil. So it was like a
Okay.
little red devil duck right there. And then one of my students gave me a heavy metal duck that had
Cool.
these hands,
Sure.
which is weird for a duck.
Yeah.
And then I had like a zombie duck, which is because why not? And
Yeah.
so like students could come into the room and they would immediately know like, oh, this guy's probably a little off. Before they even see whatever t-shirt I'm wearing.
Sure. Yeah.
So then we moved online, and when we moved online, it was unplanned. So this was my office back at the house we were renting at the time in Atlanta. I just had these posters up, and they were behind me. But it just became a thing where, again, people could kind of, as you mentioned, quickly get a feel for who I am just by looking at these things, right? This is very much a rooted in the 80s poster. It's not a good movie. The whole reason I bought the poster is because it's in French. I don't speak French.
Sure.
But in
mysterious.
French, He-Man's name is Muslor, and it says it down at the bottom, which is a much better name for He-Man. Like, if you know anything about Master of the Universe, like, the villain is Skeletor. You've got Skeletor and Dragstore, and I was like, why wasn't he called Muslor?
Yeah.
It makes
a great
way
name.
more
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I want the French poster because I think the French name is better. And then my Zach Morris. That's a Zach Morris trading card
Sure.
that my wife framed.
I love
gave
it.
to me
Yeah.
and decorated the frame. So yeah, if you look at this like in very short time, as I'm sure you noticed, like I have a bunch of new students, many of whom are career switchers. They are very frightened. They're moving into a technological industry. They're coming from non-technical backgrounds. And what I want to do is I want to make it as just relaxing and or silly as I can for them. So their first day of class, they were able to see this behind me. And when we moved, I live in Greenville, South Carolina now. When we moved from Atlanta here, I purposely hung the posters in the same order so that it would not disrupt what my students were used to, because I moved halfway through a class.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I wanted their experience to be like, I'm used to seeing Sean and I see these posters behind him. And like in my head, I don't know that it made a difference to anybody in the class, but in my head, it was like, here's a stability. I may be changing everything, but that doesn't mean that their stuff has to change. And so, yeah, it's a self-expression, and then it became a comfort thing, or my attempt at a comfort thing for folks.
Sure. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I wrote recently a newsletter about like the signals we send. We're always sending signals, whether we know it or not. Like during COVID, I bought yellow glasses. Because I was like, well, we're never going to be in person again. Like, what's it matter? Like, I'll just buy yellow glasses. But thankfully that panned out okay. But like, but the yellow glasses thing, that's a statement. Like, I didn't mean I didn't mean for that. But like, yeah, just we're always sending these signals. And like, if you could send signals, like you said, to new students, or as an artist, as a musician, whatever you're doing, you send these signals. And like, I just stress that, like, the for our websites or for whatever we're doing, like, we don't have to just be like, well, here's the artwork of my album, and that's all you get.
Yeah.
Press play and that's it. Like, no, you're allowed to, like, websites can have pictures and art and all this stuff around. Like, I'm really, really pushing like that of getting more into like the signal sending.
And I think I commented, because you were talking about signals and you were talking about the bike stuff.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's when I jumped in. And amusingly, let me see if I can adjust this camera again. Again, great podcasting. But so this is I don't even remember who did this. It's an old BMX Pro from the 90s. It's a reprint of Go the Rider's Manual logo from the cover of Go the Rider's Manual magazine, which was the last-ditch effort to save, and this is a name you recognize, Freestylin' magazine.
Yeah.
Freestylin' magazine and BMX Action had readership drop, so they both merged, and then they became Go the Rider's Manual for another couple years. And I had a subscription to Freestylin', and so one just led into the other. And when I saw this on somebody's, I think it's an old pro rider, and I think he had it on his Etsy store. I was like, done, I'm going to go buy that. And so your whole point of talking about, like, you would do things to sort of announce and kind of like establish, like, here's who I am, here's what I'm into. I do this ridiculous thing with shirts that is completely irrational, but I will purposely buy shirts that are niche. I'll buy them from small artists. I will print them. Like my wife and I have a shirt company here in we have a merch company that we do shirts for here in Greenville
Oh,
that have
cool.
like things that make sense to us that we're hoping other people will notice. But in like the most sort of widespread shirts I have are like band shirts, right? So like I have at least 10 different shirts from the band Ghost, which is, those are one of my favorite bands. So yeah, but those are you can kind of get those in lots of places. But my whole thing with every shirt that I buy and liking sort of the knit shirts is that if I run into somebody and they recognize what I'm wearing, it's going to be a deep enough cut that we're probably really going to have a connection. So like you and I completely just geeking out about BMX magazines because that's a thing we experienced. If I'm walking down the street here and somebody sees this, like, Go the Rider's Manual, I had that magazine. Like that person and I are going to have an immediate, almost deep connection that nobody else is going to understand because it was such a very small thing. But for me, it was very defining. Like it was a core part of who I became as an adult was spent on a 20-inch bicycle in the 80s, and the feelings that we got from the magazines and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's, as far as signaling goes, like literally it's irrational to an extent, but I very much am always trying to either say, if you know this, we can be friends. If you don't like this, we probably can't be friends.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm always trying to give off sort of nonverbal signals in that regard.
But again, to your point though, like you mentioned, freestyling it or BMX Plus in a comment, and it was just like, oh, hey, like, oh, and so like, yeah, it's those tiny signals, and like, it's so important to show off what inspired us, what was influential in our, early on in our life, what was like foundation building for us. Like nothing. If anything takes us back to that moment of like sitting in the woods on a trail on our dumb BMX bikes with our seats down low or something like, and the smell of the air or whatever, like, yeah, that stuff just takes you back. And like to, if you could just make that happen with a person, and not to get all like salesy and stuff like that, but if you can make someone feel something, that's what this is. Like, feel good, feel nice, feel this. And like, again, like to your point of like when you have a class and the Zoom thing comes up or whatever like that, there's these posters, feeling like you got feeling of security or feeling of like, I think I know what this guy's about or whatever. Like, so yeah, make people feel something.
Yeah. I mean, I could have some like binary code or some sort of formula or something on the wall behind me, which would be completely apropos. It would be like every computer, I only took 3, but every computer science class I walked into, there was something intimidating on the whiteboard, and that was likely from the class before me, but still I walked in, I looked at it and went, what the hell is this? And I don't want to do that with these students, right? If I've got people that I know that I've talked to before the class started, they're very intimidated by mathematics. I'm like, look, I have an English degree. If you want to know about King Arthur, I can tell you all about that. But that's about where any application of my college degree, that's where it begins and ends, is right there. But yeah, if they came in and it was like computer, math, these people are going to just be freaked out and completely intimidated, where it's like, there's a Ferrari and a Lamborghini racing over here. There's, friggin' Star Wars skateboard. They're going to be like, oh, okay, I have no idea what I'm about to learn, but I'm not worried about math.
Yeah. And to pull things back to, we said earlier, maybe it was before we started recording, but it was about people. Like,
yeah,
people, like when you run into people, that's where and then so like in the art or the creative world or teaching world or whatever, like you don't get so many chances to like make that happen. So that split second kind of reaction. Like, so I really feel like, I mean, you've probably seen this. I mean, you enjoy music. So, but you probably see tons of artists or musicians, bands being like, hey, we have a new song. And it's like, okay. But like, if they tell a story about, we almost got arrested shooting this video, or this album, we rented a $10,000 tuba for this part on, like, whoa, now I need to hear that song, more so than just a link to a new track. So amusingly, again, so you just go back to Ghosts.
And I don't know what your feelings are on Ghost. I freaking love that band. They're the only band
Love
in the last like 20 years.
The what album? Meloria, 2013
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
That I came in and loved. I love that album. Yeah, that's kind of it for me. But like, I don't fault anything else. That one's just for me. So yeah, I'm into it.
And if for those that aren't familiar with the band, they're Swedish, and they're a big rock, bordering on metal, definitely blatantly satanic in a lot of their lyrics. And so they have a new album coming out, a new tour, and they released a new single by doing like these little drips of information. They had a billboard in Las Vegas. And then they have a YouTube channel where they're kind of building this backstory. And there's a whole story about like the lead singer is this lineage. It's all fictional, but you get hooked into it. And they were announcing a new lead singer who is the 5th version. So they had this sign, this billboard in Las Vegas that said V is coming because it's Papa Emeritus 5, Papa V. And all of their imagery is very Catholic. And their performances, again, the Papa's not meaning father, it means Pope. And they dropped their new song on Ash Wednesday, which is just so like you were saying, like they didn't just release a song and be like, hey, go check out this new song on Spotify. They made a thing of releasing a song called Satanized, and it released on Ash Wednesday. And it was like, oh, what a perfect thing for this band whose entire gimmick is, heresy and blasphemy and twisting all of this Catholic imagery. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the best day to release a song about this is Ash Wednesday. And I was like, oh yeah. And the hype that they built up to it, that like, I have a 15-year-old niece who loves that band, and she was so excited. She was like, text me, Uncle Sean, did you see this? Uncle Sean, did you see this? And I was like, that's what you want, right? That's the kind of dedication you want.
To that point too, I want to because I talk to, again, we're of a certain age, and it's very easy to be like, oh, kids these days, they don't put. But to your point, 15 years old, like stoked on this. There's other 15-year-olds that are super geeked out on bands like that, and other bands that you and I don't like, but that's okay because it's for 15-year-olds and not us.
Right.
I think we're in good hands with the youth. Like they're gonna make it through.
Oh yeah. It's my brother is the consummate athlete. Like came out of the womb an athlete. Played football from first grade through, like that's how he put himself through college. Wow. Was he played football, he had a football scholarship. He's more open-minded as an adult than he perhaps was as a typical high school football player.
Sure.
And so his music taste varied, and he actually got into radio in college, and he was really big into hip hop and all that kind of stuff. So I will give him credit that he's very into and open to self-expression, and he wants that for his kids. He also had 2 very uninterested in athletics daughters, and he loves it, but he's like, this is great. And it's amusing when they come and visit, because the older my oldest niece gets, the more it's like looking into the past. And I go, oh, your daughter is me. Ha ha, take that. Because I was the sort of misfit goth kid, dark, moody. Again, The Crow came out, and I was like, this is me. Right. So I was like, and I had my interest in I came into high school right when the big 4 of thrash metal was a thing. Right. So, it's Anthrax and then the band Faith No More comes along, and I'm like, this is the greatest thing in the world. And I'm dressing and looking my best to try to copy everything Mike Patton does. Well, not everything, because that dude's a little...
He's a little out there, yeah.
He's a little out there.
He can pull some of that off, yeah.
Yeah. But, I did the undercut, or the shaves, and then they grew the hair out. And boots.
Classic.
And so here comes, my niece, and she gets out of the car, and I'm like, and I was like, oh, man. I was like, she's wearing, like... I don't even remember what band it was, but it was a very Susie Sue looking style shirt.
Okay.
It was the black and white, moody, and it was an older band. It wasn't like a contemporary band. It was like an older band. And I'm drawing a blank on who it was. It could have been anyone from Joy Division to the Smiths to, and And Jen is laughing because Jen's of that generation too. And she's like, oh yeah, that's basically my wardrobe from 1985. And here we are in 2025,
Yeah.
40 years later. And here's this high school freshman. And I was like, in a weird way, it's oddly comforting, but also really, really interesting that like this is a thing. And then it's just sort of stayed that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to get back to the signals. She is signaling now the same things that we were signaling then.
Yeah.
We're not bright, happy. We might be happy people.
Sure.
We're not necessarily unhappy, but we're not, bright, shiny, jumping out in front of everybody. And, I don't even know what
we're not preppy.
do. So
we're not.
exactly.
We're not
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly. Which was ironic because I was also a cheerleader in high school and college.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I didn't get invited to the parties, but I got to show up on the sidelines, so that worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, okay, so a lot of those signals came from like things that our parents did before us and the things that we did in the 80s, and they built on, and so it's still those same, for my niece, it's still the same signals. This is what I'm into. I like to think deeply. I like to read poetry. I'm probably upset about something, and but also I'm going to send a bunch of dumb memes about things from South Park. And it's like, okay, yeah, she is using the messaging that was created before she was even born and then building on that to continue to send these signals and making it clear that, yeah, when she walks into school, nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, that kid's super preppy. Like, no, nobody's going to think that. They're going to be very clear. Like, oh yeah, that kid went to the Smashing Pumpkins concert. Of course she did.
Yeah. Which then makes it easy for the other student that went to see Smashing Pumpkins to be like, oh, did you go to that show? And then like, who knows where that goes? Because like the people I met, and like I wrote in that post, I met Johnny Roydell, in fifth grade or something like that. And he was wearing a Bon Jovi shirt, a black denim jacket. It was like that dude. He's my dude. That's my guy. I eventually joined his band in my freshman year of high school, and like it changed everything. Like, at 15, like who knows where your niece goes from that and this, that, like, it's just so much, like, it can be so amazing, like the potential of, like, what could music look like in 10 years from these younger kids doing what they're doing? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. And to get back kind of to the hoarding thing and where the hoarding and the signals overlap, this popped into my brain as we've been talking about it. A thing that I explain to people is that, yes, I'm buying things that I wanted when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And some of that is I didn't get to have it then, so it's really cool to have it now. Mm-hmm. But a big thing with all of this is that everything I own, even whether it's new and a retro thing or an old thing, is that connection to a point in time where there was something valuable that happened for me that I'm not trying to escape where I am now as a 50-year-old man. I am trying to bring a lesson that I learned that I might have forgotten when I was younger into my modern life. And it is, I spend a lot of time desperately trying to be childlike and not childish. Childish is, you're ultra reactive and you freak out and you make a lot of loud noises and we've all been there. We all do that. And there's plenty of time for all that stuff. But there's a wonderment that we have when we're kids that we lose. I will not go on my soapbox about how the education system programs that out of kids. This is also why this is why I did not finish my degree in education. That's what I started with. But anyway, whole other soapbox. But we have this sense of childlike wonder where everything is new and we're seeing everything fresh. And part of that is because we haven't seen things before. But I'm always fighting against cynicism in my own life. And it's the antidote to that, I firmly believe, is in that childlike wonder and seeing things with beginner's eyes, right? That beginner mind, if you follow any of that in Buddhist thought. And that's a really important thing. It's an important thing I do when I'm teaching people software development. I'm like, you have to approach this with the most beginner's mind that you can. And so all of these silly toys and action figures and collectibles and posters and weird niche t-shirts is all of me trying to send out the signals that say, hey, this is who I am and this is what I'm into. But it's also me trying to put myself in that place where I'm not the 50-year-old man going, these damn kids today, they don't understand.
Yeah.
Because I've forgotten, because cynicism has won, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember what it's like to be curious about things. And so all of this is that, like, I want to have these mementos to childhood to remember what childlike wonder feels like.
Yeah. That goes along a lot too with the creative people and artists and that picked up a paintbrush or picked up a film camera when they were like to and then because they stuck with that for decades, and now they're at a level of where they're at now because they stuck with it. And then but then looking at, and this is the subject of what I write about, is like escaping social media, and like taking that childlike approach to how do I do that? Like there's another way. What's the other trail in the woods I can go on, like, that I've never done before? And like, I think it's so easy to get away from, because nothing made sense. Like when I picked up a guitar when I was 13, 14 and sucked at it, and moved to bass because everybody else was good at guitar and no one wanted to be a bass player. So I picked up bass so I could be in bands. But like, there was never like, well, what's the long term? What's the ROI of it? It wasn't. It was just like, I'm playing the band. I could be in a band. This could be the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, it's really something to apply that childlike perspective, or to hold on to that.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, and it's one of the reasons why I got into teaching software development, because I've been working in it for so long. I've worked in tech my entire career. And I've been working in software development since 2009, right? So we're looking at like 26 years at this point coming up. And I was getting really burnt out. And when I got into teaching, I did it selfishly because I wanted to remember what it was like to start to learn this stuff. Because when I first got put in front of a computer, and I lucked out, my dad was basically Michael Scott. He sold office supplies in Pennsylvania. The biggest difference is that we were Western Pennsylvania instead of Eastern.
Okay.
We were over in Pittsburgh instead of Scranton.
Yeah.
But at some point that he moved into office supplies started being computers, and they gave him a computer to bring home so that he could learn how to use it. He didn't, but I did. And I ended up taking that computer. We got it when I was in like second or third grade. That computer lasted with me all the way up till college. I put that thing on the internet, which is ridiculous. Early days of the internet, which is the only reason why you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember everything about that was like, oh, this is amazing. I feel like a wizard. I can make stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had worked in the industry for so long that I forgot about the fun in the thing that I was doing. And in teaching, it reminded me, oh yeah, this can be fun. And I think that's a lot of, like you were saying with the bass, like you're not thinking about like, what's the ROI on learning to play bass? It was like, I just want to play bass and I'll be in a band and it'll be great. And that's the thing, is like, we professionalize things almost to our own detriment, I think.
Yeah.
And we forget, like, I just make some shit. And if somebody wants it and wants to give you money for it, cool. But not everything has to be that. Mm-hmm. And, so when we're sitting down and writing apps, sometimes we just write completely silly things. I'm like, this is just going to be something silly. And I compare it to Karate Kid. I'm like, this is me teaching you how to like paint a fence or wax a car that you're not going to feel like it has any real value. But then somewhere down the line, you're like, oh, this is that thing that we played around with that just felt silly at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But now I get to kind of use this and it gets to do that. And so those things, you being in a band playing bass, is the culmination of, I just want to learn to play bass. So it had a return, but you didn't approach it from that standpoint. And it's, yeah, we get into this like, well, if I put in all of this, then what will I get back? And what is my percent? And like, God, shut up. Just go fucking make things and have fun. Sorry, I dropped the F-bomb. I don't know what the totally rule is here. So,
that kind of, no, I get pumped and stoked about this stuff too, and get energized from it. Yeah, totally. Like the go make the stuff. That's the biggest part. Like, I was gonna quote someone in a future newsletter. I forget their name. Rob, an artist. It'll be in the future newsletter. But it was just like, do work, like it's and yeah, as you were saying, like, oh, if I do the work and make this thing, then I could sell it. And just worry about doing the work first.
Yeah, yeah. Make a thing, and just like with, you saw the guy with the Bon Jovi shirt, and you were really excited to talk to him. We go to this art show, to the art toy show.
Mm-hmm.
Most of these people are just making a thing because they think it's neat.
Yeah.
But then there'll be somebody like me or somebody else, that comes along and sees this thing that they made that they thought was neat, that we go, wow, and we really connect with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can talk to them about it, and they really want to talk to us about it. And they just made a thing. I don't know that the guy that made Megachurch was like, I wonder how I can scale my Megachurch empire with action,
Yeah.
And again, this is obviously taking a shot at all of the mega churches that are here in the Southeast.
Yeah. Oh, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
It's really, really pretty hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that he was like, you know what, I just want to make this, and I'm going to make it, and if people want it, cool. If not, sure. And that's exactly it. It's like, yeah, just go make stuff. And if you're excited about it and you want to make a living doing it, share that excitement with people. And I feel like things kind of, say what you will about manifesting or whatever. I don't know how any of that stuff works, but it's like, if you're stoked on something and you find somebody else that's stoked on it, then that's just going to work out.
That's totally it. Yes. Yeah. And I always write about, like, when I'm sure this is I wasn't the only one in high school that did this, but you met and found your geek friends at the food court at the mall, because that's where you all got dropped off. And then eventually you were like, we're not going to hang out here. We're going to go back to so-and-so's house and listen to their weird records.
Yeah.
Or dub some cassettes and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it was and then it was just doing stuff. We didn't get together and like, oh, let's make a magazine. Let's make no, it was just like, let's hang out. And I think that's the biggest thing here too, is to be a collector, to be stoked on the things that it requires other people too. Yeah. To be stoked with, like, because you can make, you can, and there's nothing wrong with it. If you want to make weird toys at home and they're just for you, sure, do it, cool. Yeah. But if, like, to go out into the world and put them out there, and to put weird music out into the world, and to put weird poetry and whatever your definition of weird is, like, is just, everything's not this algorithm. Like, everything at the top on YouTube and the socials and this and that is like, yeah, the lowest, like, okay, it's popular because it's popular. And it's hard to get away from that. And like, because you put up your weird thing and 4 people see it. Of course.
Yeah.
But I bet if you make that weird toy and set up at this, like, okay, great, 4, 5, 10 people come by and talk, like that's energy. That's the excitement. That's what keeps that engine going.
And I think that's probably the poison of the social media, is that it's, as we know, all mass, and you and I experienced this firsthand watching alternative music become mainstream.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. That was a weird time.
Yeah.
I always tell the story. So again, I was a cheerleader in high school. I was a cheerleader, but I was never like in the cheerleading group, if that makes sense. Yeah. And one of the classes I took was gymnastics, because all the cheerleaders took a gymnastics course. Class wasn't a course. Yeah. And I would show up, and if I got to I was actually in the gymnasium. If I got to the gym before everybody else, I could put music on that I liked and I could listen to before everybody else showed up. And then they would show up and they're like, what's this devil music? And they would turn it off and they'd put on like Garth Brooks or something.
Sure.
That was what was popular, back in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
And then Smells Like Teen Spirit breaks through, and suddenly the cheerleaders are showing up and they're putting in Nirvana.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? And then the football team is taking the field to Enter Sandman by Metallica. And I'm like, yeah, man, didn't 3 of you beat me up for this last year? It's very bizarre. And, that's social media is that writ large, right? Some things are going to take off, and something you like is going to take off that's going to end up going huge, but ultimately it's still they're trying to reach the lowest common denominator. And
Yes.
again, I'm sure there's any number. Like I have been this gatekeeper guy, and I probably shouldn't, but it's like, I know you like that album, but the album before this was really, the Red Hot Chili Peppers really sold out on Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which I will die on that hill. They really did, but still,
Oh, yeah. I love that
and
album. That's okay.
no. So I tried to not go off on too many tangents because I realized that's all I do. But when you go to social media, everything about social media is designed to reach the most eyeballs possible. And I think depending on what you're doing, your goal may not be to reach the most eyeballs. It might be to reach the right eyeballs. And I don't think you can do that on social media. And I think that's the trap we fall into, is that if we think we've got to go and try to fight against the algorithm, we're never going to win. The algorithm's always going to be stronger because it just can be. It's computers. We've seen Terminator. It's faster. It can just beat us at these things. But if you build something and it's authentic and it's real and you own it and you put it in a place that you own it, then you now have a way where you can find an audience that you might not have found before, right? There's any number of kids in small town Bumsville, Idaho, that now might be really into a thing, and they can go find somebody else that's really into that thing, whether that be one town over or a whole other country. And this is where I think we've missed the power of the internet because we've been beaten down by the reality of the algorithms. And I love what you say, where it's like, build a website, make your thing, own your stuff. You're not going to have the easy road to just be like, I throw it on I throw it on TikTok and now I'm famous. It's like, but anything worth doing and any audience worth having is worth taking time and connecting with those people and making it so that, again, you wear a very niche t-shirt walking down the street, you're going to pass hundreds, if not thousands of people, but that one person you connect with, man, that's going to be a connection. And we can do that. The internet makes that really easy to do with everybody everywhere.
Like, I mean, even right now, like, I write a newsletter, this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. It's just you and I talking, but there's energy here. I'm going to take this energy afterwards. I'm going to heat up my coffee again, go for a walk. It's great. This is a great start to a Friday. You know what I mean? It's just one person. It's just you. It's just me. But there's so much power in that one person, the two people. Like, and I stress to all these, be the weirdo, attract who you attract, and just jump on a Zoom call, be weird together. Yeah. Like, because again, the person I'd hope can't meet it. So just do it on Zoom, or start Discord or swap emails, like that energy. And again, it's just 1-to-1. It's slow. It doesn't scale, whatever.
No.
And like, but if it gives you energy, like, I mean, how much is that worth? Yeah. Like, I'd rather have it because you and I both have probably heard, like, artists and creative people, this marketing thing. I got to, I'm paying all this money to make a video or this or that. And like, they hate it. It's such a dread. It's like, well, how's that going to turn out positive? Because there's already so much negative energy surrounded by it. So I'm always like, just do the stuff you love, and like, not trying to go do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Not that, but just like, if you can't be so stoked and in love with what you're doing, like, by yourself at what you're doing it, like, it's going to be hard then to attract others to what you're doing. Yeah. If you're always just down and grumpy and like, no one's going to like this and this, well, probably no one's going to dig it, it involves other people.
Yeah. You're putting out something that is either going to be an entryway or a don't enter sign. And you've got to be careful about what those are, and putting up the right entryway, putting out the right signal that says like, hey, I want to talk to you, because you are into this thing. And it's like, okay, cool. That's a good doorway. That doorway, I'm going to kill this metaphor. That doorway builds a bridge, and then it goes into that, right? I don't know how that works, but I'm not a construction.
No, look, and I said this too when I was talking to Michael Gilbride the other day about social media and bands. Following band accounts is never fun. They're usually pretty boring, but you follow the bass player, and that was the thing. I followed Craig Reynolds drummer from Stray from the Path, and I just loved his deadpan humor. He's not like, I'm in a band. Yeah. He's just very soft spoken, but real witty, dry humor. I'm like, I love this. And like, I'm not a drummer. I appreciate drums, but he would do these drum streams, beautiful drum streams with 4K cameras and stuff like that playing. I'm like, I'll watch this drummer play drums. That's fun, you know? And then like, they'll do a podcast with some other artists doing interviews. I'm like, I loved it. And that was my doorway into Stray from the Path. Yeah. Like that I probably like upon just hearing them out of the blue, they might not be my cup of tea, but like, okay, I like the drummer. Now, so now you know a little bit more foundation of what he's doing artistically and the direction he's going in.
I think to an extent, we have all forgotten how to curate because we've let the algorithms do it for us.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I'm thinking back to like the friends you had in high school, and that friend would have this album that from a band you've never heard of before. Like that friend may have moved from a different city where they knew about this band that they brought with them, and then you're suddenly really into that. And now we can do like now again, writ large, you can learn these things almost immediately and have an immediate like, oh, well, let me go check out this whole catalog. Let me go check out this whole thing from this person. And we used to know how to do that in small groups, right? College radio, my group of friends. Now we have, because we have everything, not to steal the movie title, but we have everything everywhere all at once. I think we've become overwhelmed and we don't know how to curate the things and do like you did. Follow this person in this band that then opened that door to get you into that band. Where if, an algorithmic ad just shoves this band in your feed all the time, you're going to, you're probably going to just ignore it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think I think the antidote to the algorithm is just being intentional and honestly, I think the answer to life is just being intentional. This is a thing I'm hung up on now the last 6 months, but, the being intentional and curating and really only find things that I literally spark some interest in you and go, okay, well, let me check this out and, throw out stuff that doesn't matter and don't feel like you have to take it all in and don't spend your time. Like, why do we doom scroll? We know it sucks. We know it's dumb. We know we're just taking in all this crap and then it's just going to make us sad. Like, curate, be intentional. It's why I love Substack because I can intentionally follow everybody. Like I can follow folks like you because I'm like, this is a person talking about a thing that I am interested in. And then again, and it led to this discussion because we started nerding out about bikes from 40 years ago.
Totally. That's the biggest thing in a lot of the folks I talk with, clients that I work with, that, how do I do this and how do I grow audience and this and that? And I like, so much of it is like, I can't be like, do ABC. But like, and you'll achieve this. But in your world, in your artistic endeavor or creative field, whatever, just go meet with 2 other people. Start a Zoom call with them. Like, because I'm not a painter or I'm not this, I'm not that, or I can't do all this stuff. But like, find those people. You're going to find so many answers. And in those weekly calls we do with Social Media Escape Club, there's photographers, there's playwrights, there's this, like, no one's doing the same thing. But when someone presents a problem or an issue or this came up, this whole collective, like, decades of experience from everybody, from all different walks of life, like the answers bubble up from that, which, and again, it's curation too. Like the way I write my newsletter attracts a certain type of person that was going to even be on those calls.
Yeah.
Like this isn't a place to like, let's defend TikTok. Like, how can I make the most, what hashtags should I use? This is the wrong spot. So
yeah, exactly. We have, we moved here to Greenville about 5 years ago. We love this city. And one of the things we love about it is that it's just big enough. We call it Goldilocks, right? It's our just right city. We lived in Atlanta. Atlanta was huge. I lived in Athens, Georgia. I went to University of Georgia. It got to be too small, right? Athens. I lived there for almost 20 years. And when I got divorced, I realized how small of a town it was because it was like amicable divorce, but still I couldn't go places without running into my ex-wife. And I was like, I need to go. And this city is just big enough for a lot of things. And one of the things I like is that there's a guy who runs an organization that he calls Beer and Napkins. And he has different groups, and they're kind of just meetups, but he has like Beer and Napkins Creators Group and Beer and Napkins like engineering. And it's just a bunch of folks getting together at a brewery, super like loosely organized, but kind of topics. I go to both. Like, my wife is an artist. We go to the creators one. I go to the technical one. And it is that same thing where it's like, the other night we went and we heard this fascinating story of a guy that was a chef here in town. And he told his story about, becoming a chef, and he opened up these restaurants, and he went through a really bad period of burnout. Now he's shrinking back down. He's opened up a small storefront and was talking about a few different things. And he just kind of offhand mentioned, he's like, I have a banner right now because we don't have a sign yet. And so Jen was like, oh, I'll make him a sign. Yeah. And it's right. And it's like, so we talked to him afterwards, like, hey, let us know what we need to do, because Jen does woodworking and painting and all that kind of stuff. So she's like, yeah, if you want a sign, let me know the details and I'll make you a sign. And it's like that kind of thing, that opportunity for Jen to do that and make some art that's useful and helpful, and working with a small local guy that's, that's starting over and doing cool stuff. Like, it's like the Zoom calls, right? It's find those people, go hang out with them, have a beer, if you don't drink, have a drink,
sure,
have a water, have a Zoom, have a Discord or something. But yeah, those things, like all of that sprouts.
And too, like, I know we got to wrap up here, but like thinking too of like that opportunity immediately, like, it's so easy to think, well, what about financially? What's the rate for such a, and like, I don't know of the obviously details, but like the ROI is just like doing something cool for someone too. Yeah. Like that could be ROI. Like that could, like, if I'm getting energy back from this, like, again, I mean, we've spoken almost an hour here and stuff, like our time is valuable.
Yeah.
But I got a lot out of this. You know what I mean? I know other people are going to get a lot out of this. And like, that's why we do this stuff. Like the exchange of energy.
And if Jen put out on Instagram, I do signs, who knows what the hell she kind of get back?
Yeah.
And B, she wouldn't kind of it wouldn't necessarily be something she'd be interested in, because she doesn't know the person she's doing it. And also she doesn't want to just make signs. She's not just a sign maker. It's just, she has this broad skill set of things that this person has this need that she's like, yeah, I'll make this sign for this person. And then maybe if it leads to somebody else wants something, or somebody else, but either way, it's like she gets to control. I want to do this thing for this person, and it is in my skill set, and it's something that I would enjoy. And it's not just throwing a bunch of crap out on Instagram and being like, hey, who wants a sign? I'm giving them away, and we've done that. Like we've done online promotions for some of her artwork for like, I want to paint your pet, and gotten like the winner never followed up to get their portrait done.
Sure.
It was like, where this is like, if he works out the details, she may end up doing a sign.
Cool. Great. And if not, you just run into that person again in town, you say hi, whatever, and it's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. You can buy a sandwich from him, and you're like, okay, we're good. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Sean, this was so good. Thank you so much for chatting with me and talking about
my pleasure.
Collections and curating. This took so many wonderful turns. I love it all. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Hopefully some of it made sense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, this is going to make sense for a lot of people listening in their earbuds or watching stuff like that. I think people are really going to dig this. So thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for coming into this world, Sean. I'm glad to know you. And
same.
This. Cool.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your day, man. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah. You too. Take care.
Awesome. Bye.